Sadly, you and I are required to either live in the past or the future. Living in the present is highly condemned indirectly in society. It seems like we're kind of coerced into living in such an anxious state. For example, constantly thinking about the future and future outcomes or future possibilities that you could get yourself into, or constantly harping on the past, your regrets, disservices that have happened to you, different life traumas, etc. And living in the future and the past instead of the present moment makes it to where you're missing life. It's going to pass in a heartbeat. You're going to blink a few times and the majority of your life is going to be passed by. Now, when you're constantly held up in the future or the past, it's very easy to gravitate towards anxiety. Anxiety within itself is the unknown. It's the unknown about the future circumstance. This is actually exactly what prompts anxiety in the first place. And we live in the most anxiety-ridden, depressed-ridden society we have ever lived in, period. And this is particularly one of the reasons. With the absence of living in the present moment, it's harder to be grateful. It's harder to be thankful. It's harder to look around and see the fact that you have a roof over your head, or food, or loving friends. It's difficult to see the little things, and you easily take them for granted, or not even notice them at all. If you want to become the most powerful and competent and confident and aligned version of yourself that you possibly are able to obtain, you will not be able to do this if you're not a present person. If you're not living in the moment and actually being authentically yourself in the present moment, you will not be able to obtain any level of success that you deem worthy, because it is in the present moment that actually matters. You can't grow from thinking about the future. You can't grow about harping on your regrets. The only thing that allows you to grow is your actions and your present actions in the moment, because your present actions in the moment are constantly producing what history is. It's constantly producing your past. So obviously, if you're not a very present person and you're not in the moment, your past is going to be filled with the unconscious. Your past is going to be filled with your actions that are prompted by a state of unconscious or unawareness or unintelligence, and you're going to feel very misaligned spiritually, mentally, and perhaps even physically. The mind is either scattered in memory or anticipation. Presence is consciousness unclouded by projection. The future is merely memory projected forward, and the past is memory replayed. In this way, only the present is ever real. Yet most of us tend to live as if the present is the least important. We try to capture the moment, to relive it. But the only way to actually live in the moment is to fully inhabit the present time. It must be inhabited fully, not grasped, not visualized. You must completely surrender to the present moment and let your guard down in that respect. Now, one of the great ways that we could practice being more present in the moment are things like prayer or gratitude practices or even meditation and breathwork. All these things really force you into your body and into the present moment. And if you practice these enough times, you're going to be easily gravitated towards the present moment. And it's not going to be something that you want to run away from like usually we do. In a large respect, people have a natural inclination to gravitate towards people that are actually real in the present moment. And people tend to not have a gravitation towards people that are constantly living in the past, filled with regret or anxiety. And as sad as that might be, it's just true. It's unsafe to not surround yourself by people that are actually real in the moment. Things like anxiety, regret, envy are outside of the present moment, and they happen to be extremely negative emotions. And on the contrary, joy, love, creativity, these are things that are in the present moment. These emotions cannot be inhabited any other way. Presence is communion with God. The popular I am is the name of the divine, and in a lot of ways, to dwell in the present is to touch eternity. Eternity is not infinite time, but the timeless presence where God dwells. In a large respect, the future and the past are not even real. Matthew 6:34, in the Sermon on the Mount, Christ specifically states the following: "Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." Christ here is teaching about the present moment and the importance of living in the present, and he's actually condemning living in the future because it does prompt that level of anxiety. Most people are elsewhere, living in distraction, enslaved by phantom timelines. Social media is weaponized absence. It has an endless past of archives and an endless future of scrolling with absolutely no now. The only now that comes from social media is creating. The only now that comes with technology itself is that of production and creation. But being consumeristic, there's no present moment within that. You're just digesting that which is made in the past. And your motivation to keep digesting content is by your anxiety about what's in the future, but it's under the guise of entertainment. A man who is unable to connect to the present is unfit to love, create, lead, because their mind isn't in reality, it's somewhere else. And this is very obvious. Some ways that you could get better at being in the present and actually practice things that directly help you with your tendency and inclination to go into the present moment are things like breathwork, taking deep, controlled, aware, conscious breaths that force you into your body and mind. Because spinal fluid is directly hooked up and connected to your breath and your breath quality, that and your posture. So having both good posture and good breath is actually going to create more spinal fluid going throughout your spine, going throughout your body, and particularly your mind. And this is pretty much just going to give a supercharge of nutrients to all these different organs in your body. And particularly about the spinal fluid actually does like a pulsation effect that seems to be directly hooked up, that seems to be directly linked to your breath as well. So the deeper and more controlled that your breaths are, the deeper and more controlled and more present your spinal fluid is going to be unleashing into your brain. And the way that your spinal fluid unleashes spinal fluid into the brain is right next to the middle cortex of the brain. Your spine is releasing spinal fluid, like literally right in the back of your head. There's some of the main pivotal parts of the brain right there where it's releasing that fluid at. For example, your amygdala and your pineal gland, which are thought to be spiritually connecting parts of the brain. Another thing that helps getting into the present moment is eye contact. Now, when you have good quality eye contact with somebody, or just eye contact at all, this actually forces you. In a lot of ways, this makes it to where you're looking into the other person's soul, which does sound pretty crazy, but it's actually true. This is one of the reasons that people have such a hard time with eye contact, is because it's so intimidating. It's a very powerful situation, just eye contact itself. It's easy to tell where that person is coming from and what that person is thinking, and it's easier to connect to that person, and it's easier to connect to yourself just through simple eye contact. So this is honestly the number one thing that you could practice, and it's going to make it a whole lot easier for others to connect to you and for you to connect to others. And then rituals like praying or fasting, or even things like training. These are all very present, circumstantial activities, especially praying. But let's take training, for example. I mean, you have to be completely connected with your mind, body, and spirit while you're training, or else your training is going to suffer in quality. And the exact same goes for all the other things that I listed. Now, prayer, in this case, is one of the most exceptionally positive things that you could do for practicing being in the present moment, because you have to go deep down in your psyche and your soul to speak to the source or the divine creator without feeling pretentious or fake. It's very intimate, and there's a level of surrender that comes with it. Another thing that helps being in the present moment is practicing radical honesty. Now, radical honesty is going to be incredibly uncomfortable in some cases, but if you're able to be completely honest as a person, you're actually directly coming from the deepest, most present parts of yourself. Whereas if you are thinking about your response or thinking about what that person wants to hear, that within itself is not present. That within itself is obviously dishonest and pretty much lying. But greater than that, you're faking yourself. You're particularly pausing your response into curating some sort of response that you think is more appropriate. But in all reality, the best responses that you could always take are truthful, quick responses. Because the more that you have to think about what you're going to say, a lot of the time that is probably insinuating that there's some sort of falsity or mask that either you or the people that you're talking to are trying to continue. To live in the present is to die to illusion. Everything real happens in the present. God, love, beauty, creation, growth, it all happens in the present moment. It doesn't happen anywhere else. And in fact, it cannot take place anywhere else. The most tragic life is one fully absent from itself. It's a tragedy for you to miss the present moment, because you missing the present moment is synonymous with missing life. Live so fully in the now that eternity deems you as kin. And on that note, I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Let me know what you guys think about presence and how it acts in your life. And if you guys disagree with me on anything or want to further discuss anything that I talked about in this video, just put it in the replies or comments, or you could personally message me on like my Instagram or my Twitter or something, and I'd love to talk with you further about, whatever questions you have or whatever statements or anything that relates to this video or doesn't relate to this video. Let me know. So if you guys are interested in getting more familiar with how your hormones work, I compiled a ton of information about it and put it into this ebook that I'm selling for $7. So check the website in the description, and it's just like a digital ebook, and it's a pretty quick read, but there's a lot of very good information that I compiled and put in there. And on that note, I hope you guys have a good day, good week, good month, and I'll see you in the next one.